All right, diving in today to the world of cultural attributes.
Yeah.
Going to be unpacking some fascinating ideas from a collection of Chinese texts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they explore this concept through all sorts of lenses: philosophy, history, economics, even pop culture.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty wild. And get this, they talk about strong versus weak cultures.
Okay.
It might just change how you see the world around you.
It's more than just shifting your view, though. These attributes are
Oh,
like an operating system running in the background of a society.
okay.
Yeah, they influence how people behave, how they make decisions, often without even realizing it. These invisible forces shape not just individuals, but how whole nations function.
So you're saying it's like we're all playing this game of life
Uh-huh.
with a set of rules we never agreed to.
That is a great analogy. And the texts we're looking at today, they suggest there are two main rule books:
Okay.
strong cultures and weak cultures. Strong cultures operate in sync with reality. They acknowledge natural laws, encourage resilience, focus on individual strength.
Okay. Weak cultures, on the other hand, they tend to rely on hope. They look for external saviors, or they try to bend the rules.
Gotcha.
And that, according to these texts, can lead to dependence and weakness.
Okay, so give me an example of this. Like, how would this strong versus weak thing actually play out?
Sure. So one example from the text talks about farmers.
Okay.
Imagine one farmer who understands the seasons, knows when to plant, when to harvest, works with nature's rhythms. That's strong culture thinking. Then picture another farmer who prays for rain, blames the gods when there's a drought that leans toward weak culture.
That makes sense, but I can already hear people pushing back. Is it fair to categorize entire cultures as strong or weak? I mean, isn't that oversimplified?
You're absolutely right to question that.
Yeah.
The texts themselves acknowledge this complexity. It's
Okay.
not about labeling entire societies. It's more about recognizing patterns of thinking and behavior.
Right, yeah.
Patterns that can empower or limit individuals.
Uh-huh.
And by extension, their cultures.
And what's fascinating is how these patterns show up in specific situations,
Okay.
shaping how people respond to challenges, to authority, even their own ambitions.
So you're saying we should be looking at this more as a spectrum
Yes.
than a black and white thing.
Precisely. Think of it as a lens for understanding the forces at play, not a tool for judgment.
Okay, so let's talk about those forces then. How do these cultural attributes actually show up in real life?
Well, the texts dive into some fascinating examples. Like, there's this historical figure named Fan Zhongyan.
Okay.
He's presented as a model of strong culture principles.
Okay.
And what's interesting about him is that he consistently chose service and resilience over personal gain, even when facing really tough situations. It wasn't just talk about her. His actions embodied these principles.
So it's not just about saying the right things, but actually like living those values.
Exactly.
Okay, that's powerful. But what about when those values clash? Like what if ambition and service pull you in different directions?
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
The texts actually delve into sibling rivalry and power dynamics in the Qing dynasty,
Oh, wow.
showing how cultural norms around ambition played out within families. We see how these invisible rules influenced who rose to power
Right.
and how they wielded it.
I bet those same dynamics still play out even today.
Oh, absolutely.
In companies, politics,
Everywhere.
yeah, even friend groups.
Yeah.
It's all about how we navigate power structures.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier, these attributes can shape entire nations.
Yeah.
Didn't the texts talk about China's long history as proof of its strong culture?
Yes, they did. Some argue that China's ability to adapt and evolve over thousands of years, it's a testament to the strength of its traditional culture. But then others point to elements like what they call an official-centric culture,
Right.
where people are too focused on pleasing those in authority
Right.
as evidence of ingrained weaknesses.
So how do we reconcile those two viewpoints then? Can a culture be both strong and weak?
That's a fantastic question, and it actually leads us to one of the central debates in the source material.
Okay.
Are so-called weak aspects truly products of specific cultural values?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they just universal human flaws, like greed or laziness, things that exist everywhere, regardless of culture?
Okay, now I'm really curious. How do the texts address that?
Well, they don't really offer a definitive answer.
Okay.
Instead, they use this tension between cultural values and universal human tendencies. To make a more intriguing point, they argue that recognizing our cultural programming, recognizing what we've inherited, it can be the first step to making better choices, more conscious choices.
Okay, so it's not about blaming our culture for our shortcomings.
Right.
It's more about like becoming aware of how it influences us.
Absolutely. And they're not saying one culture is inherently superior to another.
Okay.
Remember that operating system analogy?
Yeah.
Just like operating systems have their strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
so do different cultures. It's about recognizing those differences and understanding how they impact a society. How well it can adapt and thrive in a given context.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's go back to that idea of individual choice, though. If we're all influenced by our cultural programming, how much agency do we actually have in shaping our own destinies?
That's where the concept of strong culture thinking comes in.
Okay.
One hallmark of weak culture thinking is this reliance on external forces, like luck or fate, to determine what happens. It's that victim mentality,
Right.
where people feel powerless to
Okay.
change their circumstances.
So a strong culture mindset would be more about taking ownership then,
Yes,
focusing on what we can control, understanding our actions have consequences.
exactly. It's recognizing that while we can't always choose our starting point,
Okay.
we can choose how we respond to challenges, how we learn from setbacks,
Yeah.
how we shape our own path.
That's a powerful shift. This reminds me of something else the texts discussed. The idea that strong cultures are more aligned with natural laws and objective reality.
Right.
What exactly does that mean? It sounds a bit abstract.
It's actually quite practical.
Okay.
When you break it down, they're talking about recognizing universal principles, whether we like it or not. Things like cause and effect, the need for effort and discipline to achieve results.
Right.
Understanding that resources are finite.
Okay.
Strong cultures acknowledge these realities and work within them. Weak cultures often try to ignore them or seek exceptions.
Okay, so if I'm applying a strong culture mindset, I'm not just wishing for things to magically get better.
Right.
I'm focusing on what I can do
Exactly.
to influence the outcome.
Sure.
Knowing there are limits to what I can control, but working within those limits.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that success isn't guaranteed, but we increase our odds of success by aligning our actions with reality. It's like understanding that in nature. You can't just wish for a tree to grow.
Right.
You have to plant the seed, nurture it, give it time. And even then, sometimes things don't go as planned.
That's a great analogy. And I guess in those situations, a strong culture mindset would be about learning from those setbacks.
Yes.
And trying again.
Exactly. It's about embracing that reality. That success often involves trial and error, adaptation, willingness to keep learning.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the label strong culture can feel judgmental.
Yeah.
The texts actually address that concern.
Oh, really?
They emphasize that these terms aren't meant to be absolute labels for entire cultures.
Okay.
Cultures are constantly evolving,
Right.
influenced by all sorts of factors. What might be a strong attribute in one context could be a weakness in another.
Right.
It all depends.
So it's less about judging entire cultures.
Yeah.
It's more about recognizing these patterns of thinking that can empower or limit individuals and societies.
Right. And the real value here lies in using this framework as a tool for self-reflection. To examine our own beliefs and behaviors, identify where we might be operating from that weak culture mindset,
Right.
and consciously choose to adopt more empowering perspectives and habits. It's about taking responsibility for our own growth.
Okay, so if we're not supposed to take these labels literally,
Right.
what's the takeaway here? What are we supposed to do with this information?
Well, the text suggests that by understanding these cultural attributes, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves, our motivations, and how we interact with the world. This awareness can then empower us to make more conscious choices, to cultivate the attributes that lead to strength and resilience,
Right.
and to break free from patterns that might be holding us back.
So it's about taking all this knowledge about cultural attributes and using it as a lens to examine our own lives. Figure out what's working, what's not. How can we be more effective
That's a great way to put it.
in achieving our goals?
Yes. It's about shifting from judgment to understanding,
Right.
from blame to responsibility, from seeking external saviors to becoming our own agents of change.
This makes me think about traditional culture and how it shapes these attributes.
Yeah.
Some of the arguments I've heard suggest that weak cultures are just a product of outdated traditions that no longer serve us in the modern world.
Right.
What do the texts say about that?
They definitely present that perspective.
Yeah.
Some of the authors point to examples of how certain traditional beliefs or practices might have been adaptive in the past,
Right.
but now hinder progress and individual growth.
Gotcha.
It's about recognizing that traditions aren't inherently good or bad.
Okay.
It's about figuring out which aspects serve our highest good, which need to be re-examined
Right.
or even discarded.
So it's about critically evaluating our own cultural inheritance,
Yeah.
figuring out what empowers us and what holds us back.
It is. It leads to another thought-provoking idea.
What's that?
Just like biological species evolve over time, couldn't cultures evolve too? Shedding outdated beliefs, adopting new ones,
Right.
ones that better serve their needs in a changing world.
That's fascinating. So it's not about clinging to the past.
No.
It's about recognizing that cultures are dynamic and
Yeah.
need to adapt to survive.
Exactly. The source material suggests that cultures that are open to new ideas, willing to adapt, embrace critical thinking, those are more likely to thrive in the long run.
Makes sense.
It's about finding that balance
Right.
between honoring our heritage and being open to growth.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change.
Yeah.
If cultures become too rigid, too resistant to change, they risk becoming stagnant or even collapsing
Right.
under the weight of their own outdated beliefs.
And that's where this concept of strong culture comes in.
Okay.
It's not about clinging to the past.
Right.
It's about cultivating the attributes that allow for adaptation, resilience, continuous learning. It's about embracing the principles that empower individuals and societies to thrive in a constantly evolving world.
This whole conversation is making me think about education.
Yeah.
The role of education in shaping these attributes. Like, if we want to cultivate strong culture mindsets, shouldn't we be teaching these principles from a young age?
That's a fantastic point. It's something the texts touch on.
Oh.
They argue that education shouldn't just be about transmitting knowledge.
Right.
It should be about fostering critical thinking, problem-solving skills, a sense of personal responsibility.
So it's not just memorizing facts.
Right.
It's about learning how to think for ourselves, how to question assumptions,
Exactly.
how to apply knowledge to benefit ourselves and society.
And this type of education can be crucial in shaping those attributes.
Okay.
Promoting things like self-reliance, innovation, a willingness to embrace change.
This ties back to that idea that cultural attributes aren't fixed.
Right.
They can be shaped, molded, even transformed through education, conscious effort, challenging outdated beliefs.
And that's an empowering message, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests we have a degree of agency
Yeah.
in shaping not just our own destinies, but the direction our cultures go. It's about recognizing that culture isn't just something we inherit,
Right.
something we actively create
Yeah.
through our choices, actions, interactions with the world.
Okay, I'm really starting to get the depth of this concept.
Good.
But if we move beyond this broad discussion of strong and weak cultures, how do we identify the specific attributes that lead to strength and resilience?
That's where the texts get even more insightful.
Okay.
They offer examples of historical figures and modern-day success stories that embody those strong culture principles.
Okay.
They provide frameworks for understanding how these attributes show up in different areas of life.
Like what?
From business and politics to personal relationships, even spiritual growth.
So they're not just presenting abstract theory.
Yeah.
They're giving us concrete examples of how these principles play out.
Exactly. What's fascinating is, despite the cultural and historical context, the underlying principles resonate across time and borders.
Okay.
Suggests there are some universal truths about human nature.
Right.
The conditions for success
Yeah.
that transcend specific cultures or time periods.
Now, I'm really intrigued. Can we dive into some of those examples?
Sure.
What are some of the key attributes that the texts highlight?
Well, they emphasize things like resilience,
Right.
adaptability, and a strong sense of purpose. They show how these qualities show up in people's lives, how they contribute to the success of entire societies.
Okay, let's start with the resilience.
Okay.
How do the texts define that, and how do they illustrate its importance?
They portray resilience as the ability to bounce back from adversity,
Oh.
learn from setbacks, keep moving forward when things get tough. And they showcase this through stories of people who faced incredible challenges,
Right.
but refused to give up.
This makes me think about the story of Fan Zongying again.
Yeah.
He definitely exemplified resilience, didn't he?
He did. Even when facing political pressure and personal setbacks, he never compromised his values or lost sight of his goal to serve the people. He's a powerful example of how resilience, combined with purpose, can lead to incredible achievements.
It shows how important it is to have that guiding principle.
Yeah.
Why that keeps us going when things get tough.
Absolutely.
So resilience and purpose go hand in hand. But what about adaptability? How does that fit in?
Adaptability is crucial, especially today.
Yeah.
With how rapidly the world is changing, the texts emphasize the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn
Okay.
as a key aspect of strong culture thinking.
So it's about recognizing that what worked in the past might not work now.
Exactly.
Or in the future.
Yeah.
And being willing to adjust.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I imagine that can be challenging.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially for societies that are very traditional. How do we honor our heritage while still adapting and innovating?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll look at specific examples of how individuals and societies have navigated that tension
Okay.
between tradition and innovation. We'll discuss practical ways to embrace change while still honoring our cultural roots.
So we talked about these strong culture attributes, resilience, adaptability, having a strong sense of purpose. But how do we actually put these into practice? Are there examples of like people or groups who have successfully made that shift?
Oh, yeah. There are some really compelling examples in these texts. One that stands out is the story of the Wang Miao Village Project
Okay.
from the novel The Distant Savior.
Yeah, that one really stuck with me too. I mean, it's fictional.
It is fictional.
But it illustrates these principles so
It
well.
does.
You've got this poor village trapped in this cycle of poverty and dependence. Then this outsider comes in with a totally different approach.
Right. It's like a real-world test of these strong versus weak culture ideas.
Exactly. And what's so interesting is this outsider, Ding Youyang, he doesn't just offer handouts or easy solutions.
No.
He challenges them to break free from that weak culture mentality.
Right. That waiting for a savior thing.
Yeah. And empowers them to create their own success.
Exactly.
It's like he's saying, stop waiting for a miracle or the government to rescue you. You have the power to change your own destiny.
It's tough love.
Yeah, but it seems to work.
It does. He helps them set up a business based on principles of self-reliance,
Okay.
market competition, commitment to quality, guides them to think strategically, embrace innovation, own their outcomes.
So he's giving them the tools and the mindset to shift from dependence to self-sufficiency.
Exactly.
He's showing them like what a strong culture can look like.
And that's a key takeaway here. This strong culture isn't magic.
Right.
It takes conscious effort, willingness to change old ways of thinking, commitment to learning and growing. But it's possible. The Wang Miao Village story shows us that.
That's inspiring, but it is just one example.
Sure.
And it's fictional. Do these principles apply in like other contexts?
Oh, absolutely. The texts also touch on German culture, especially the emphasis on discipline, efficiency, and a strong work ethic. Now, not saying German culture is perfect.
Right, of course.
But there are definitely elements that align with the principles we've been talking about.
So what is it about German culture that embodies those strong culture attributes?
Well, they point to the emphasis on precision, attention to detail,
Right.
long-term planning, strategic thinking, focus on quality and craftsmanship, their sense of social responsibility.
Those are impressive qualities.
Yeah.
Makes sense. They've contributed to Germany's success.
In various fields.
But it's not just about economic success, though, right?
Right. The text suggests these strong culture attributes also contribute to social cohesion, stability,
Okay.
a shared commitment to working together.
Yeah, for the common good.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these inspiring examples, but how do we translate this into action in our own lives? What are some steps we can take to actually cultivate these qualities and inspire them in others?
Well, the texts offer some valuable strategies. One is the power of education.
Okay.
It's about fostering critical thinking, encouraging a growth mindset, teaching people to embrace challenges as opportunities to learn.
So not just filling our heads with information,
No.
but learning how to think for ourselves, analyze information.
Right. Solve problems creatively.
This makes me think about mentorship, too.
Oh, yeah.
Surrounding ourselves with people who embody these qualities.
That's crucial. The texts talk about observing and learning from those who have achieved success in areas we want to improve in. It's about finding mentors who can guide us, inspire us.
Yeah, challenge us to grow.
And it's not just about finding mentors, though.
Right.
It's about being mentors ourselves.
Yeah, paying it forward.
Sharing knowledge, experience, inspiring others to develop those strong culture mindsets.
Yeah, creating that culture of mentorship and support
Exactly.
where everyone learns from each other, helps each other succeed.
That's essential for cultivating these qualities on a larger scale.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
It has.
I'm feeling really motivated
Good.
to put these principles into practice, but I know change can be hard.
It can.
How do we deal with resistance or setbacks when we're trying to make these shifts?
That's a great point. The texts remind us that cultivating these qualities is a journey,
Right.
not a destination. There will be bumps along the way.
Right.
They emphasize patience, persistence,
Uh-huh.
and a willingness to see failure as part of the process.
So celebrating the small wins, learning from mistakes,
Yeah.
not giving up when things get tough.
And having a supportive community helps a lot. Surround yourself with people who believe in you, encourage you, help you stay the course.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening. We went from understanding strong and weak cultures
Yeah.
to exploring how to actually cultivate those qualities that lead to success.
And I think the key takeaway is we have the power to shape our cultures, both individually and collectively. By understanding these principles, making conscious choices,
Right, supporting each other.
we can create a world where those strong culture attributes flourish and empower us all to thrive.
That's powerful. So as you keep exploring these ideas, remember, you have the power to embrace the qualities that empower you.
Yeah.
Challenge the ones that hold you back and contribute to a world where strong culture leads to a more resilient and fulfilling future.
Don't underestimate the power of small actions, consistent effort, and believing in your ability to make a difference. The journey begins with each of us.
Yeah, one step at a time.
One choice at a time.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive
You're welcome.
into the world of cultural attributes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to embody those qualities that make us stronger, wiser, and more connected to the world around us.